looked like a quiet week, but it turned out it wasn't a quiet week because of all these milestones these players achieved across the ATP Challenger Tour and the ATP 250 tournaments throughout last week. So the ATP better take notes because this is what we watch the tour for. More specifically, the Challenger to 250 timeline is working. This is proven by Mariano Navone and Rafael Jodar's maiden tour level title, while Roman Andres Burruchaga also reached his maiden tour level final a week right after winning the Sao Paulo Challenger. At the same time, how about Liam Broady and Facundo Diaz Acosta's comeback since their respective injuries? Considering they also won the title to mark their return, I don't think it's too slow of a week, but let's follow along because there's a lot to unpack from last week. Before we get to last week's finals, let's follow the main journeys through this trajectory watch. So there are several journeys, and some of those might be related to this week's finals, but they are somehow one of the main stories of last week. So we start with Marco Trungelliti's long-awaited top 100 debut at 76. For some, he's known as El Hombre Quali for his qualifying to Grand Slam events. He qualified to the main draw 8 times, including some consecutive slams like the Australian Open to French Open or Roland Garros 2016, and then another streak of Wimbledon, US Open 2021, and then the Australian Open in 2022. Not to mention that Marco drove 10 hours from Barcelona to Paris as he was announced as the lucky loser in Roland Garros 2018. He also had some notable main draw wins, which means that through this top 100 ranking, he will have direct entries to the Grand Slams and even 96 draw Masters 1000s, and if not that stacked, other tour events. Marco's previous career high was 112, also achieved in 2019, and if you follow Marco's entire journey, like for the past decade or so, you might feel that at least several, not too long, I think it was two years ago or somewhere along those lines, it looked like he was further from it, or like even further from it, but everything sort of kicked in Africa. Like, he always wanted to visit the continent, but note that outside of the North African and South African events, the Kigali Challengers started as a 50 and 75 in 2024. And there, Marco runner-up the first week. He also won the second week 2 years ago. He went back to Rwanda just not long ago, despite being eliminated in the quarterfinals to a informed Joel Schwartzler in a very tight match. Marco turned out to win the title for the second week. Therefore, you might want to say that Marco's taking it if there are 500 or Masters 1000 even in Africa. Note that this is a joke unless there are miracles on how Africa is getting more tour level events, including a 250 minimum, but a 500 and Masters 1000 would fit this joke even better. Also, to achieve all of these at 36 years old and becoming at least the fourth oldest to do that, since Ken Rosewall, Mal Anderson, and Roy Emerson in 1973. It was the year when these rankings were first released. It was a blast. By the way, some might also remember when Marco reported the offer to fix a match for around $50,000 or something. I think it was around a decade ago or 8 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. We know that it's often hard given the circumstances. Like, imagine being intimidated just for reporting or just somewhere along those lines. The way that the offer looked tempting, especially for lower ranked players. But honestly, Marco did what he had to do. He grinded, as always, and it's paying off, at least for the moment. Curious to see how he follows up, especially in this clay season, which is just starting. The next journey is Rafael Jodar's rise to 57 in the rankings after his Marrakech 250 title. Stay tuned here for the final recap because he played amazing. So, for this to happen, Rafa still had his points from his 3 challenger titles last year. He then started this year by runner-upping the Canberra Challenger as well as his elimination in the second round of the Australian Open from the qualifying rounds, and he also made it through the third round of the Miami Masters 1000, also from the qualifying rounds. This time last year, he's still studying in the University of Virginia, and his ranking was around 900, and he played challengers in Mexico as well, outside of college, like exactly this time last year, and now he's closing into the top 50. This added even more to what last year's next gen finals batch achieved, and we might see even more of them from this batch as we progress through the season. For some, Rafa's decision to turn professional made sense given his game, and who knows that he could rise even further for the remaining of the season. The next one is Michele Ribecai's rise. So I started tracking him because of his frequent second round to quarterfinals appearance in the challenger events, especially within the past semester. So he's only ranked around 1000 in juniors back in 2021. And I started noticing him somewhere last year, but I started tracking further when he made the second round in Pantiet 1 Challenger and a quarterfinal finish in Naples, and all of them came from the qualifying rounds. So it turned out that thanks to his deep runs in the ITFs, I think it was at least until semifinals, when the ITF rankings were a thing that was for the ITF World Tour tennis players, like for the entry level thingy. He was ranked 40 in 2024, and the grind paid off last year as he won 2 ITF M15 titles, and he became a runner-up at 3 events, 2 in M25s and 1 in M15s. And he already made his maiden challenger final in a 75-point event at home in Barletta. Just keep listening to see how he did in the finals. Not to mention that there are some people in this comeback squad. First, it was Liam Broady. He couldn't catch a break even after cracking top 100 in 2023. So he had ankle injuries. Then he suffered briefly from head concussion for a bit 2 years ago. Then he also recently had pectoral issues. But he came back with 3 ITF M15 titles and runner-up one of them last year, followed by another runner-up showing in Lyon, Dessine Charpieu, the indoor one, in also last year. And all the way before that, he was the runner-up of the Saint-Tropez Challenger in 2023 to debut in the top 100. And the other one is Facundo Diaz Acosta. So he was sidelined in a lot of 2024. So that was the year he won the Buenos Aires 250 due to right shoulder injury. That's also the reason he missed the Summer Olympics in Paris that year. After his rapid rise in 2023, that also included a gold medal in the men's singles sector of the Pan American Games. He also had foot issues in 2025, but he's back with the second Tigre Challenger title despite a rocky way back. Both Liam and Facu won titles this week, and stay tuned for their finals roundup way later. Speaking of the finals, I'm going to start with the 250 corner. This is a very rare occasion where I peak at the ATP 250 finals. These milestones were a blast, and that's why I'm picking at all three finals. Why not? So the first one was the Bucharest final, where 7th seed Mariano Navone defeated qualifier Daniel Merida 6-2, 4-6, 7-5. For Mariano, who won the Cap Cana Challenger this year, it was his third tour level final. He runner-up two of them. While for Dani, who won Tenerife 1 several months ago, this is his maiden tour level final, coming all the way from the qualifying rounds. So, Mariano capitalized on Dani's slow start, likely because of nerves, and he somehow found his lines with more depth and some grounds, questioning Dani's shot choices, and he ended the first set dominantly 6-2. Dani then stepped up in the second set, as visible from a forehand down the line winner before his early break to 1-0. Before Mariano pushed back from the longer rallies before the break back, I think it was to 1-1. However, it was very timely that Dani found his dropper to break 2-1, as well as scoring another forehand down the line winner before doubling his break to 4-1. Mariano then took advantage of a loose service game by firing a backhand winner to break 4-2, but Dani somehow broke back again several points after a different forehand winner to make that 5-2, which meant that Dani initially had to serve for that set, but I think tightness hit Dani at that game, and then he needed that second chance to serve for the set, and he did, taking it 6-4 eventually. The third set was very tight, neck and neck between both players, with some depth and point construction on display. So Dani broke earlier to 3-1, but credits to Mariano's defenses before a forehand winner to break back 3-2 leveled the play with a hold to 3-3, but Dani tended to rush under pressure. At the game, he got broken to 5-3, which meant that Mariano had his first chance to serve for the match. But the Argentinian 7th seed had too much points foiled because of a double fault and a different forehand error. Weight of the occasion, And then there was another long forehand error near the end of that game that caused Dani's breakback to 5-4. But then there was a noticeable deep forehand winner after another longer rally for his game point before Mariano held to 6-5. And at that, with another scoreboard pressure, Dani, who was initially slated to force the tiebreak, ended up getting broken for Mariano's maiden tour level title. Note that Mariano also runner-up the same event 2 years ago, and this added to his titles after winning 5 challenger level titles of his career. The next 250 level final was in Marrakech, where Rafael Jodar defeated qualifier Marco Trungelliti 6-3, 6-2. This was Rafael's maiden tour level final, and as I mentioned, he started the year by becoming the runner-up of the Canberra Challenger, while Marco came all the way from the qualifying rounds. And as I mentioned, with the deep run here, he debuted in the top 100 and becoming the 4th oldest to do so. For short, it felt like Marco was overpowered in some sense, but I thought he had a nervy start, which was capitalized by Rafa's early aggression to break early 1-0. I remember noticing a volley somewhere for a different juice, but Marco's errors also couldn't help. But what caught my attention was Rafa's deep cross-court forehand winner to hold around 3-1, and Rafa broke for the first set 6-3 thanks to his backhand down the line winner and another preceding backhand to Marco's unforced error. At least those shots comprised the last 2 points. And Rafa's returning also played a big role in dominating the second set. Starting from a forehand return winner 2 points into that game, and firing another powerful forehand to Marco's unforced error to break early 2-0. And fast forward near the end of the match, Rafa notably blasted 3 forehand winners, including a return winner to break for the title to 6-2. This marked Rafa's maiden tour level title, and he's now at 57 in the rankings, 7 lines away from the top 50, and that was also an addition to his 3 challenger titles of last year and another runner-up earlier this year. So brace yourselves for even more of him as the season progresses. And the last one was the Houston 250, where 4th seed Tommy Paul defeated Roman Andres Burruchaga 6-1, 3-6, 7-5. So Houston was the place where Tommy notched his maiden tour level win, while Roman came right from previous week's Sao Paulo challenger when he won against Jaime Faria from a set and a breakdown, and Roman even defeated the likes of Brendan Nakashima, Leonard Yen, and had a stellar performance, especially on serve, against his compatriot Iago Agustin Tirante 6-1, 6-1 on his way to the finals. So this was a neat match, but Tommy actually had a dominant start, hence the first set breadstick, already mixing up some pace that left Roman guessing at times, and he blasted a lot of key shot winners from various wings. Like, I noticed there was a forehand winner, and then I also noticed some backhand winners as well in some crucial points in that set. But Roman started making adjustments in the second set, where he became more aggressive in long exchanges. I'm not sure whether he absorbed some pace, but it turned out to be working because it looked like there were more depths in Roman's shots or somewhere along those lines. He started with a deep forehand down the line winner before breaking to 2-0, and he held to 3-0 thanks to a successful drop shot. However, he double faulted somewhere, and Tommy took that advantage to smash his way for his breakback point, and he did break back to 3-2, but Roman broke back again to 4-2 after a pass to Tommy's volley errors and then a different pass contributing to that breakback. Roman then saved a break point with another smash before massively holding to 5-2, and he still took the second set 6-3, successfully serving for it. So there went the third set to determine the championship. So the longer rallies initially carried Roman, but the nerves got the best of him at the end. So the initial question was Tommy's second serves, because there were a couple of double faults that caused Roman's break to 2-1, but Tommy somehow found a backhand winner 2 points after a different return winner. He tried to make a breakback chance in the 6th game, but Roman massively held to 4-2. Fast forward several games later, Roman had 3 match points on return. One of those made thanks to a forehand winner, if I'm not mistaken. But Tommy saved all 3 of them through an unreturned serve, a different forehand error on Roman's half, and his successful volley, before scoring another gigantic hold to 5-4. This meant that Roman had to serve for the title, but there were several forehands that went too long, not to mention another weight of occasion that hit him, and thus the tightness or something. You know, had Roman converted one of those match points, it would have been his maiden tour level title. Tommy used his experience after breaking back to 5-5 to hold to 6-5. Roman initially had game points, if I'm not mistaken, there, and Tommy foiled at least some of them, asserted more pressure from the back, including a forehand winner for one of those juices. Roman's backhand error created Tommy's match point, and it was converted over another forehand that went too long, and Tommy ended up breaking for the title 7-5, and that was Tommy's first clay title after winning 3 titles in indoor hard courts, 2 of them in Stockholm and 1 in Dallas, all 250s. And he also won Queen's Club 500 on grass as well 2 years ago to make that his 5th tour level title. Tommy even commended Roman in his championship speech, saying that Roman just came from South America and won a title there. Commended Roman for the amazing tennis he played over the week, and it's gonna get better for Roman, hoping that he would have a great first season on tour. And journeys like Roman's show that the pipeline between the ATP 250 and the Challenger Tour is working, and that's why we watch and follow the Challenger Tour, because their rise doesn't come overnight. So we start the weekly Challenger Finals recap with another comeback story here in the Miyazaki Challenger, where Liam Broady defeated 7th seed Harry Wendelken 3-6, 6-2, 6-2. As I previously mentioned in the Trajectory Watch, Liam runner-up the Lyon Dessiné Charpieu, the one indoors, last year, while Harry was the runner-up of this year's Hersonisos Swan Challenger to Toby Samuel. So Harry had an aggressive start through some notable forehand winners, despite Liam's best efforts to flip the script, as evident near the end with some backhand winners. And somehow Harry found a way to break for the first set 6-3. Liam steadily stepped up, building from that part of the set, breaking early before consolidating to 2-0, scoring a backhand winner before doubling his break to 3-0, and there were several moments where Harry had to take a medical timeout. Harry's backhand winner paved the way for his break back to 4-2. Liam once again found his backhand down the line winner for his breakpoint to 5-2 before taking the second set 6-2. In Liam's case, his backhands kept firing, which contributed to his early break to 1-0, but he had a loose service game to be broken back to 2-2 before he had a smash, before breaking back to 3-2. Liam consolidated his position to 4-2, but he started the next game with another smash, and he continued that solid return game with a backhand winner to break again to 5-2, and he eventually took the third set 6-2 to get over the finish line of this Battle of the Brits. This marked Liam's third challenger title after winning the Biel Challenger in 2021 and Vilnius Challenger in 2023, as well as being a runner-up at this level 10 times. There might be hopes that he could return to that pre-injury form if he's healthy and the form is supporting enough. The second challenger final of that week was the Menorca Challenger, where alternate Raul Brancaccio defeated qualifier Alex Martinez 6-1, 6-4. For Raul, he came back from some mental issues and exhaustion, and he somehow survived the 3-set semifinal against Dali Blanche. And this was Alex's first final since runner-upping the Segovia Challenger in 2024 to Antoine Escoffier, suffering from both knee injuries that kept him on the sidelines for ages. And the University of Oklahoma alumnus notably defeated first seed Valentang Royer 6-7 with a tiebreak score of 9-7. 6-4, 6-3, navigating the crazy win from a set and a breakdown. For both, it would be their first finals after a while, first title as well, but Raul was too good in some important moments. So Raul already got Alex run over to break early 2-0, scoring a forehand winner before breaking 4-0. He scored another dropper for his breakpoint as he tried to bagel, but it didn't happen as Alex held to 5-1, and Raul eventually baked that first set breadstick 6-1. Raul initially had another backhand down the line winner for his breakpoint before breaking to 1-0, but the Italian alternate had a loose service game somewhere to get broken back to 3-3, only to break back to 4-3 as Alexa's forehand errors didn't help, and basically the alternate hadn't looked back since. This was just Raul's third career challenger title, his first since winning the Nomea Challenger 2023 when he saved a match point in the second set against Laurent Locoli. I remember it was especially after a rain delay that the turnaround happened. And Raul also became the runner-up of the Cesenatico Challenger indoors earlier this year. The third challenger level finals that week was the Barletta Challenger, where Lucas Neumeier defeated lucky loser Michele Ribecai 2-6, 6-3, 6-3. The stake was either player's maiden challenger level title, but Lucas was a challenger runner-up 6 times, while this was Michele's first challenger level final, but I started tracking him earlier this year thanks to some round 2 and quarterfinal appearances as I mentioned. So what made me interested earlier in the first set was Michele's solid start with a volley and a forehand winner within several points to break 3-1, but his forehand errors caused Lucas's breakback to 3-2. Lucas's backhand error and the forehand one at the end confirmed Michele's breakback again to 4-2, but for the same reason, which was Lucas's loose service game, Michele broke for the first set 6-2. It might have looked like Lucas was more offensive from the second set as he went after Michele's backhands that were rather erratic to break early to 1-0, but what caught my attention the most in Lucas's case was his backhand winner to set up his set point at 5-3 before breaking for the second set 6-3. That was what made Lucas stood out in the second set, and he somehow carried on that form to the third set, where he broke early to 2-0, also due to Michele's frequent backhand errors. But the Austrian faced breakpoints a couple of times, mostly due to a double fault and then some forehand errors midway through. But despite those questionable margins sometimes, he still managed to hold his service games. I think twice. There was the 1-2-3-2 and then there was another 1-2-5-2. So whether the pressure increased for the occasion, who knows? Lucas then somehow hit a backhand to Michele's forehand error to make the deuce in the 8th game as he tried to break for the match, but it didn't happen as Lucas still had to serve for it. He somehow had a forehand error that saved a match point, but Lucas still converted it anyway to hold 6-3 for his maiden challenger title. That's how Lucas returned to the top 200. At the same time, there came a classic of matches in Sao Leopoldo as 7th seed Facundo Diaz Acosta defeated 2nd seed and wildcard Hugo Delien 5-7, 6-2, 6-4. Earlier this year, Facu won the 2nd Tigre Challenger title, and Hugo's latest challenger title was in Prostieov in 2025. And to make it more interesting, Hugo won their first 2 meetings of this matchup. One of those was the 3-set victory earlier this year. considering both were former top 100 players and their previous meetings as well, a classic was expected and it delivered. So, to start the proceedings, Hugo led as far as 5-2 initially, where he broke early to 1-0, scoring an earlier breakpoint through a volley. And then he also outhit Facundo at the net, especially with a deep drop shot earlier on, before breaking to 4-1. And he survived Facu's breakback point through a forehand down the line winner, but Facundo struck back with some forehand winners to break back to 5-3 and 5-5, which were the games where Hugo should have served for this first set. However, Facundo's backhand errors, including a different pass from Hugo to Facundo's failed volley, and there was this close call backhand which turned out to be out for Hugo's break to 6-5, and Hugo ended up taking the first set 7-5. Facundo then built from that level race from the middle until that end of the first set to dominate the second set, starting from a volley. I think I noticed a couple of these before his defense to attacking Hugo's forehands more specifically, to break 4-2. Then he consolidated his service game to 5-2. And the key for the next game was Facundo's backhand winner to 30-30 before Hugo's forehand errors once again contributed to Facundo's break for the second set, 6-2. Hugo then had some flashes of moments in the third set, but Facundo turned out to dig deeper. Initially, it was Facundo's backhand errors that caused Hugo to break early to 3-2. Hugo consolidated to 4-2 despite Facundo's best efforts. Imagine starting the sixth game with a backhand pass and then another lob before passing the finish within the first 4 points of that game. And Hugo even had a cross-court forehand winner to set up another break point, trying to double that break advantage. But it didn't happen since Facundo massively held to 4-3, and that might have set the tone for the rest of the match. Because he outhit Hugo's forehands once again to break back to 4-4, held to 5-4 despite surviving another different pass, and then Facundo started the 10th game with a drop shot 2 points into that game and somehow having match points, and Facundo broke for the third set 6-4 to clinch his 7th career challenger title and second of this year, joining 9 other people who won 2 challenger titles this year. Feel free to interpret if competition gets tighter or what, because there are 10 people at the moment who hold 2 challenger titles this year, and we are still in April. Last but not the least, the last challenger final that week was the San Luis Potosi Challenger, where third seed Nicolas Mejia defeated first seed and defending champion James Duckworth 7-6 with a tiebreak score of 8-6 and 6-2. Outside of being the defending champion, had James won instead, he would have equaled the record of Go Soeda with 18 career challenger titles, but I guess it had to wait. A fun fact, both Nicolas Mejia and James Duckworth won challenger level titles in the penultimate week of 2025, where Nico won his latest challenger title in Bogota, Los Lagartos, a fitting end to the season at home, while James won the Sydney Challenger 2025 the week before, also at home. So James's volley might have won him the first point of the match, but Nico still held that game to 1-0. Nico then benefited from James's backhand error to break 2-0, and Nico then benefited from James's backhand errors to break 2-0, at least the recent points, at least the last few points of that game. Almost doubled the break, but James still went on the board with a hold to 3-1. Nico's backhand error then saved his own set point when he had the chance to serve for the set, but James Foley once again set up his earlier breakpoint before he broke back to 5-4. However, the first seat's forehand error then set up Nico's set points once again before he massively held to 5-5, and the tiebreak became inevitable several games later, where there was a mini break exchange. So Nico's return confirmed his mini break to 4-3, holding to 5-3, but he had another unforced error that negated that until 5-5. He had a set point through a smash to 6-5, but it was foiled over a failed pass several moments after his drop shot, despite his decent defenses. There was a close call cross-court backhand from James afterward, so on the camera angle, you might have thought that it was in, but it turned out to be slightly out. But what was slightly out would remain out, and that set up Nico's latest set point to 7-6, and he immediately converted that to take the first set 7-6. The second set, however, almost a one-way traffic, where Nico went in control from the back of the court. James's earlier backhand errors didn't help, so Nico broke early, then consolidated until 2-0. But credits to Nico's depth and aggression once again. For instance, when I spotted a forehand down the line winner to double the break 3-0, and he also had a flick volley for his break point at the 5th game as he tried to bagel initially. But James held that game to 4-1, and he might have started the 8th game with a rare backhand winner if I'm not mistaken, but Nico still successfully served for that second set 6-2 and eventually won his 4th career challenger title to reach his career high ranking of around 148, marking his top 150 debut. And beyond those finals, I also noted down several classic matches, and most of them came from, if not the second round, there was a semi-final one, but I also had some honorable mentions from the later rounds. So the first match I nominated for the weekly nominations was the second round of the Sao Leopoldo Challenger between Paulo Andres Rafael dos Santos and Lorenzo Joaquin Rodriguez. So Paulo survived several breakpoints before holding to 4-3 in the first set, but it took his drop volley finish for his set point 2 points before a +1 error on Lorenzo's half confirmed Paulo's first set 7-5. But at the second set, Lorenzo had a successful lob to set up his breakpoint before his return winner confirming his break to 3-2. So he steadily stepped up from his depth there, and he then held his serves to 4-2 to strengthen his position after surviving a deficit. But he also survived a breakback point through a forehand winner before holding to 5-3 and volleyed his way to break for the second set 6-3. So among all games in the third set, Paulo survived several shaky games where there were breakpoints that he faced before massively holding to 2-2. But fast forward to the tiebreaker, which settled this match eventually. Lorenzo initially saved 2 match points despite Paulo's attempt to dominate, one through a forehand return winner cross-court and a preceding forehand to hold, while the other one was Paulo's deep backhand down the line winner for his match point before holding for the win to 7-6 with a tiebreak score of 8-6. The next one in my nominations was the San Luis Potosi semifinals between Nicolas Mejia and Tristan Skulkate, where there were breaks exchanged in the first set, but Nico became more aggressive at least in the last few sets, dominating the second one and even nailing the tiebreak once he went after Tristan's baseline game in general. The other two were other second round matches, with the one in Menorca as Valentin Royer faced Alex Martinez. As I previously mentioned, they both tried to navigate the wind, which also delayed the play in some occasions. The wind was very crazy, and Alex pulled a comeback from a set and a breakdown after mixing up some pace that overwhelmed Falangtang. And the next one was a typical Paul Jeb tussle with Tung Lin Tony U in Miyazaki's second round, where Tony ended up going over the line after around 3 hours. My honorable mentions went to Kimmer Kopeyans and Vitaly Sachko. It was also a general Kimmer tussle in the quarterfinals of the Barletta Challenger. Another one was almost a late submission between the Sao Leopoldo finals as Facundo Diaz Acosta took Hugo Delian, where I could have exempted this tournament and Sao Leopoldo having 2 nominees, but some other tussles were that equally compelling for me for some reason, which is why there were 4 different tournaments being nominated. The other one was the other San Luis Potosi Challenger semifinal between James Duckworth and Rodrigo Pacheco Mendez, and after sharing a set apiece, the tiebreaker, I think the third set got it for me at a glance, but at least some parts of the other semifinal might be how I ended up nominating them. It was a split between the other San Luis Potosi semifinal between Nico and Tristan and the Menorca second round between Falangtang Roye and Alex Martinez in a very small poll on Twitter. But if you also feel that some other matches turned out to be a classic, also let me know. So after all the singles recaps, it's time for the doubles watch. So I'd like to begin the doubles watch with some shoutouts from the 250s. So the bigger story was Ben Shelton, who played with his former teammate in University of Florida, Andres Andrade, defeated first seed Orlando Luz and Rafael Matos 4-6, 6-3, and 10-6 in the match tiebreak for the Gators in Houston. So Ben did not leave Houston empty-handed. Well, who knows, this can boost Andy's confidence in this week's Sarasota Challenger. The next one in the college pipeline is the Ohio State alumni Robert Cash and JJ Tracy defeating Vasil Kirkov and Bart Stevens 6-2, 6-3 in Marrakech for their first tour-level title on the red clay. They also won the Aix-en-Provence Challenger last year, if I'm not mistaken. And in Bucharest, Sadio Doumbia and Fabian Reboul won their 23rd overall team title, second in Bucharest after 2024, and sixth in the tour level as first seeds, defeating first-time pairing Adam Pavlashek and Patrick Rickel 6-1, 6-4. These 250s also marked a comeback for Yuki Bambri and Michael Venus as they marked their return together as a pair with a bang, marking Michael's return from torn tendon and detached ligament issues that caused him to be sidelined since last October. And they reached the semifinals, being eliminated to eventual champions Sadio Doumbia and Fabian Reboul in Bucharest. And also shout out to Filip Pietonka, who also made his top 100 debut in doubles after winning the Lille and Thionville Challengers with Ivan Liutarevic, as well as having 3 titles with Simon Kielan last year, as well as having a semi-final run with Younes Lala Milarusi, who also attended the University of Tennessee in Marrakech. And back to the challenger level winners for doubles. So in Miyazaki Challenger, Jisung Nam and Patrick Niklas Salminen defeated Yuta Shimizu and James Kent Trotter 7-5, 6-3. Jisung Nam and Patrick won 2 titles in 2024 and they reunited after Jisung's mandatory service. In Menorca, Prucia Isaro and Niki Kalianda Punacha defeated second seeds Siddhant Bantia and Alexander Donsky 6-3 and 7-6 with a tiebreak score of 7-3. This marked Prucia and Niki's 2 challenger titles as a pair for this year. And not to mention that last year, when they started pairing for the first time, they also won the Australian Open Asia Pacific Wildcard Playoffs to earn their Australian Open main draw wildcards in men's doubles. In Barletta, in what turned out to be the most classic of doubles finals for this week, top seeds Filip Duda and Stefan Latinovic defeated second seeds Milos Karol and Vitaly Sachko 7-6, tiebreak score of 7-4, 6-7, tiebreak score of 8-6, and 13-11 in the match tiebreak. Note that Sachko that day played 3 times because of Barletta being rain delay previously. Singles quarterfinals against Skimmer, and then the 5-7, 5-7 loss against eventual runner-up and lucky loser Michele Ribecai, and this doubles final. Wow. Props for Vitaly for surviving 3 matches, all of them. Not to mention that in Sao Leopoldo Challenger, Boris Arias and Johannes Ingildsen defeated Nicolas Alvarez Varona, Mario Mancia Diaz 6-3, 4-6, 10-8. And last but not the least, in San Luis Potosi Challenger, Jake Delaney and Tristan Skulkate defeated third seeds Facundo Mena and Rodrigo Pacheco Mendez 6-4, 7-6 with a tiebreak score of 7-2. So what does this upcoming week have in store? So in this broad overview, note that we have 2 Challenger 125 events in Monza and Mexico City. In Monza, the main question would be Rafael Colignon's ability to defend his title, as well as the continuation of Michele Ribecai's journey as he received a special exempt to this event. It's very stacked in the European Challenger terms, and also check the doubles as well because some pairs did not get into Monte Carlo, so they played in Monza, making it really packed. You might find some matches going on at the moment, like the likes of Jakob Schneider and Mark Wallner taking on Finn Reynolds and James Watt, who won 5 challenger level titles together last year, if I'm not mistaken. Then in Mexico City, we also have top seeds like James Duckworth, Tristan Skulkate, and Mackenzie McDonald. Not to mention that Luka Pavlovic also tried to defend his runner-up from last year. And speaking of those 125s, also don't forget to check the ATP Challenger official YouTube for more stuff from there, including the brief highlights from the main courts, which are streamed also on Tennis Channel, Unext, and all other TV channels that also have the rights for select Challenger events. And for some main tour stuff going on at the moment after the 250s, there's this Monte Carlo going on at the moment. Feel free to check their official YouTube and the Tennis TV and the ATP Tour's official line. It's very appreciated to also follow the official coverage of these tournaments. The next ones are also equally interesting with Sarasota, Campinas, and Wuning. So, Wuning is the sole hardcourt challenger in this part of the Asian Challenger swing, while in Sarasota, both Lee Bing-woo and Kei Nishikori tried to extend their comeback. Speaking of Kei, so there was a rumor from the Herald Tribune newspaper that went all over social media that Kei Nishikori wanted to retire there in the IMG Academy where he mostly trained, but it ended up being denied by his agent, and Kei confirmed that the rumors were false in a tweet. So let's see what happened from there. And also watch out for Stefan Dostanic as he also won his first round match yesterday. And in Campinas, If you'd like to also watch something possibly neat, there would be a Brazilian derby between Gustavo Reis and João Lucas Reis da Silva. Who knows, it could be the match of the round. And by the way, I've been covering the Challenger Tour and other lower tier circuits as a fan. So if you enjoy the podcast or the overall work, I have some support links attached in the caption. No pressure at all, but it would help support this project. And I guess that would be it for this episode. Thank you for listening any part, or if you're here from start to finish, I also appreciate it. And hope to see you next week with even more stories. Until then, everyone, see you.